You know, sometimes you hear native English speakers use these expressions and you're like, huh.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, you know all the words, but put
Right.
them together and
With the whole
yeah, it's a whole different meaning. It's like, what is going on here?
Yeah.
Well, you've just stumbled upon the wacky world of phrasal verbs.
Oh, yeah.
And today we're going to, demystify them,
Demystify them, right?
give you some tools to actually start using them yourself.
Yes.
So you can sound really cool and fluent like a native speaker.
That's right. It's funny you should mention feeling like you're trying to crack a code.
Yeah,
Because phrasal verbs,
they do.
they really can feel like that.
Yeah.
But they're essential for truly understanding and speaking English fluently.
So true. I remember when I was learning English, phrasal verbs
I bet.
were one of the things that tripped me up the most.
Yeah. happens to almost everyone. Let's start with the basics. We're diving into a stack of resources you shared, all about phrasal verbs. A phrasal verb is basically, a verb like give, combined with a preposition or an adverb like up. And voila, you've got give up.
Right. And give up, obviously, doesn't mean to hand something over.
Right.
It means to quit.
Yes, to quit, to stop.
So the meaning, completely changes.
Exactly.
And that's what makes them so tricky.
Exactly. And that's why simply knowing, a ton of vocabulary words, isn't enough.
Right.
You need to understand how those words combine and interact with each other to form these new meanings.
I guess that's why they can make someone sound so much more natural and fluent, right?
Absolutely. Think of it like this, individual words are like the ingredients in a recipe, but phrasal verbs are the finished dish.
Okay.
They add flavor, nuance, and depth to your language.
Okay, that's a great analogy. So instead of just saying look at, you might say look after someone, meaning you're taking care of them.
Precisely.
Yeah.
It conveys a much more specific meaning. And it shows that you have a deeper understanding of the language.
Okay, but the thing that always confused me is that it seems like there are so many of them.
Right.
And they seem so random.
That's a common misconception. While there are a lot of phrasal verbs, they're not random at all. There are actually patterns and rules that govern their formation and usage.
Okay, that makes me feel a little better. So let's dig into those rules.
Let's do it.
One of the first things our sources talk about is the difference between transitive and intransitive phrasal verbs.
Right.
Do you want to break that down for us?
Of course. Transitive phrasal verbs are action verbs that need an object to complete their meaning.
Okay.
For example, you can turn off the lights.
Okay.
Here, lights is the object of the phrasal verb turn off.
Right, so turn off needs something to be turned off.
Yeah.
Otherwise, the sentence doesn't make sense.
It's turn off. You know what I mean?
Right. On the other hand, intransitive phrasal verbs can stand alone without an object.
Okay.
Like, he woke up early.
Okay.
There's no object needed for the phrasal verb woke up to make sense.
That actually makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And there's a fun trick I learned to remember the difference.
Okay.
Transitive phrasal verbs are like taxis. They need a passenger, the object, to take them somewhere. Intransitive phrasal verbs are like buses.
Okay.
They follow a set route, no passengers needed.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's a great way to remember it. But there's another layer to this phrasal verb puzzle.
Oh, no.
That often trips people up.
Oh.
Separable and inseparable phrasal verbs.
Ugh, yes. This is the one that always gave me headaches.
Oh.
You can say pick up the book or pick the book up.
Right.
But you can't say run into the store.
Right, run into the store.
Only run into the store. What's the deal with that? It all comes down to whether you can separate the verb and the preposition or adverb.
Okay.
With separable phrasal verbs like pick up, you can put the object either before or after the preposition.
Right.
But with inseparable phrasal verbs like run into, the verb and preposition have to stay together.
Okay, I'm starting to see the light here.
Okay.
But how am I supposed to know which ones are separable and which ones aren't? Do I just have to memorize them all?
You don't have to memorize them all, but there are some clues that can help you figure it out.
Okay.
For example, if the phrasal verb has a single word equivalent,
like
look after, meaning care for, it's usually inseparable.
Oh, that's a helpful tip. So are there any other strategies for learning phrasal verbs besides just trying to memorize them?
Our sources actually emphasize that rote memorization is the least effective way to learn phrasal verbs.
Really? Okay.
Instead, they recommend focusing on context and real-life situations.
Okay, so ditch the flashcards.
Right.
And start paying attention to how native speakers actually use them.
Exactly. Instead of trying to learn every single phrasal verb out there, Focus on the ones that are relevant to your life and interests.
So if I'm planning a trip, I
Right.
might focus on travel-related phrasal verbs like
Yeah.
check in, take off, or get away.
That's a great example.
Yeah.
And once you start noticing these phrasal verbs in context,
Yeah.
you'll be surprised at how quickly they start to sink in.
So it's not just about understanding it like in theory.
Right.
It's about actually using them in real conversations.
Absolutely.
And our research really emphasizes that point.
Yeah.
Like if you want to become fluent with phrasal verbs,
Yeah.
you got to put them into practice.
Absolutely. It's like learning to play a musical instrument.
Oh, okay.
You can study the notes in theory all you want,
Yeah.
but until you actually pick up the instrument and start playing,
Right.
you're not going to make any music.
That's a perfect analogy. So how can we help our listener like pick up these phrasal verb instruments and start playing with them?
One effective way is to create scenarios
Okay.
and role-play different situations where you might use phrasal verbs.
Okay.
That's exactly what our sources recommend.
Right.
And they even give some examples we can try out.
Okay, game on. Let's say we're at the airport
Okay.
and I'm about to head off on a business trip.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Are you excited about the trip?
I am, but also a little nervous. I have to give a big presentation,
Oh, wow.
and I'm worried I might mess it up.
Don't worry, I'm sure you'll do great.
Okay.
Just remember to breathe, speak clearly,
Okay.
and connect with your audience.
Right.
What time does your flight take off?
It takes off at 9:00 a.m.
Okay.
So I should probably get to the airport by 7:00
Okay.
to give myself plenty of time to, check in,
Right.
go through security.
Right.
I always feel a little stressed trying to figure out all the airport procedures in English.
I get it. Airports can be overwhelming, even in your native language.
Yeah.
By the way, if you want another set of eyes on your presentation before you go,
Oh, okay.
just let me know. I'm happy to look it over.
Oh, wow. That would be amazing. I might just take you up on that.
Okay.
See, we're already using phrasal verbs without even thinking about it.
Exactly. And once you start using them in context,
Yeah.
it becomes much easier to remember them
Yeah.
and incorporate them into your everyday speech.
Okay, so we aced the airport scenario.
They did.
But what about a more everyday situation, like at work?
Okay.
Our research also has some great role play examples for that, too.
Let's dive into that.
Okay.
Imagine we're colleagues
Okay.
trying to finish a project
Okay.
before a tight deadline.
Oh, this is too relatable.
Yeah.
It's Friday afternoon. We've got this big report due on Monday morning.
Right.
And I'm feeling totally swamped.
Oh, no.
Are we going to be able to wrap this up before the weekend?
Okay. First, take a deep breath. We've got this.
Okay.
Let's not freak out.
Okay.
Instead of feeling overwhelmed,
Yeah.
let's break down the remaining tasks
Okay.
and figure out what we can realistically achieve today.
Right. We've definitely got to prioritize.
Yes.
Maybe we can put off some of the less urgent things until next week.
Yeah,
What do you think?
I agree.
Okay.
Let's look over the project plan
Uh-huh.
and see what we can delegate or postpone.
Right.
We can definitely knock out a few of these key tasks today
Okay.
if we focus and work together.
You're right. A little teamwork can work wonders.
It can.
Plus, we've totally powered through similar situations before.
Exactly.
Right.
We're a great team.
Yeah.
And we know how to get things done.
We do.
Remember that time we had to come up with a whole new marketing strategy in just 24 hours?
Oh, man, that was intense.
It was.
But we did it.
We did.
Okay, I'm feeling much better now.
Good.
See, talking it through
Yeah.
and using some power phrasal verbs along the way totally helps.
It really does make a difference.
It does.
You know, another one of the recommendations in our source material
Okay.
is to learn phrasal verbs in groups based on themes,
Okay.
like travel, work, or emotions.
Oh, that's smart.
Yeah,
It makes them more relevant and easier to remember.
it does.
So instead of just memorizing a random list of phrasal verbs,
Right.
you could learn a bunch of work-related ones
Right.
to use in your professional life.
Exactly.
Nice.
It's all about making them meaningful
Yeah.
and applicable to your everyday life.
Right.
Speaking of making things fun and engaging,
Okay.
remember those fill-in-the-blank exercises from our sources?
Yes.
Let's give those a whirl.
I'm always up for a challenge.
Okay.
Okay, first one.
Okay.
I need to blank my phone. I can't find it anywhere.
Let me think. I need to look for my phone. I can't find it anywhere.
Yes.
Got it.
You got it.
Okay.
Okay, next one.
Okay.
She blanked her old friend at the concert. What a coincidence.
That would be... She ran into her old friend at the concert.
Yeah.
What a coincidence.
You're on a roll.
Okay.
Okay, last one.
Okay.
We should blank our shoes before entering the temple. It's a sign of respect.
Easy peasy. We should take off our shoes before entering the temple. It's a sign of respect.
You're a phrasal verb master.
Thank you.
Now, while practicing and role-playing is super helpful,
It is.
our sources also point out some common pitfalls
Okay.
that many English learners stumble into,
Yes.
like, along the way.
Right.
And one of the biggest ones is the temptation to translate directly from your native language.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And English phrasal verbs often don't have direct equivalents in other languages.
right.
So trying to force a translation can lead to some awkward or even incorrect usage.
Yeah, it's like trying to fit a square peg in a round hole.
Right.
The meaning just doesn't always transfer over
Right.
neatly. Yeah. I actually have a funny story about that. Once when I was first learning English, I told my friend I was going to look up my grandmother, meaning I was going to, like, visit her.
Oh.
And my friend looked at me like I had two heads.
I could see where the confusion would come in there.
Right. They thought I was planning to, like, do some online research about my grandma.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. It just goes to show how important, like, context is.
Yes.
With phrasal verbs.
Yes.
And speaking of pitfalls, another common one is overusing certain phrasal verbs while neglecting others.
Right.
You mean like using get up, go out, or come back for everything?
Exactly. It's like having a whole toolbox full of tools, but only using a hammer for every job.
Right.
A native English speaker would probably use a wider range of expressions,
Okay.
like wake up, head out, or return.
So branching out and trying new phrasal verbs is key.
Yes.
And of course, there's the classic mistake of not practicing enough in real conversations.
Absolutely. You can understand the concept of phrasal verbs all day long, but it's a whole different ball game when you're trying to use them spontaneously in conversation.
Yeah, it can feel a little scary at first.
Right.
Like you're going to mess up or say the wrong thing.
I totally get it, but remember, making mistakes is part of the learning process.
True.
Everyone makes mistakes, even native speakers.
Right.
So,
yeah, and sometimes those mistakes can lead to some pretty funny moments.
Exactly.
Like look up my grandma story.
Exactly. It's all about embracing the learning process.
Yeah.
And not being afraid to experiment.
Yeah.
And that brings me to another interesting point from the research.
Okay.
The fact that certain phrasal verbs might be more common in specific English-speaking regions.
Oh, yeah, like how pop over is something you'd hear more in the UK than in the US.
Precisely. So what might sound perfectly natural in one region could sound a bit strange in another.
Right.
It just adds another layer of complexity to this wonderful world of phrasal verbs.
It's fascinating, though, right? Learning about these, like, regional differences makes you realize how diverse and dynamic the English language really is.
I couldn't agree more. It's a constant journey of discovery.
Yeah.
So where can our listener go if they want to continue exploring this fascinating world of phrasal verbs?
Yeah, our research highlighted EnglishClub.com and Fluent U as great places to find more examples, exercises, and explanations.
Awesome.
And of course, there are tons of other websites, apps, and books out there.
Right.
Specifically designed to help English learners master phrasal verbs.
The resources are truly endless these days.
They are.
It's amazing to think that you can basically carry a whole language learning library in your pocket.
So before we wrap up, any final words of wisdom for our listener on their phrasal verb adventure?
I think the most important thing is to remember that learning phrasal verbs is a process, not a destination.
Okay.
Be patient with yourself, keep practicing, and most importantly, have fun with it.
Yeah.
Don't let these tricky little expressions get you down.
Yeah.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Phrasal verbs are challenging, yes, but they're also a key to unlocking a deeper level of fluency and understanding in English.
Absolutely.
So embrace the challenge, enjoy the journey, and hey, if you happen to have any funny phrasal verb mishaps along the way,
yes,
we'd love to hear about them. Until next time, happy learning.